So we are really excited to welcome Alyson Griffin, the head of marketing from State Farm, who will be joining us alongside Kristin Glushon, the head of partnerships and marketing at Trigger, the XR agency. So we will welcome them on shortly, but overall it's been such a great day of women in marketing, hearing some amazing panelists. So continue to share your questions for those speakers in our chat function for Alyson as she joins us, because I know she'll want to hear what you guys want to hear about. Hi, Alyson, how are you?
Getting my mute off. There you go. Hi, how are you?
There you go. Good. Glad to have you joining us today. And looks like Kristin's on as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Well, I'll hand it over to you to take it away, but really excited to hear from you both.
Great, and thank you so much to our audience. My name is Kristin Glushon. As was mentioned, I'm the head of partnerships and marketing for Trigger, the mixed reality agency. We create AR, VR, and XR experiences to connect consumers to brands and sports and entertainment and e-commerce. And I have the distinct pleasure of moderating the session with Alyson, the head of marketing for State Farm. And we've had some really great conversations. I think today's session is going to be focused not only about the unique perspective that we as women in marketing have, but also about the changing landscape that many brands are facing, like State Farm, and how they are adapting using new types of channels to reach an audience. So I'll just jump right in with my first question, Alyson, because I think it'll give you a great opportunity to introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your background. But my question stems from something I saw about a week ago. It was a McKinsey study that was just sharing that in today's environment, likely as a result of the pandemic, no doubt, a lot of individuals, men and women, but especially with women in particular, they're reevaluating their needs in the marketplace and what they're passionate about and how their employers can really help to satisfy them. And interestingly, in your background and career journey, you were presented with kind of a similar pivotal moment where you made a shift. And I think it would be great for you to share your backstory and what you learned from that moment, as I think some of those takeaways can be applied to today's audience as well.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me, and for all of the attendees listening in. I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time to talk to Kristin and I. Thank you. And so pivotal moments. It's funny that you say that. I had a biggie early on in life, kind of pre-career, actually. I ended up I grew up in Silicon Valley, born and raised, and was around technology. And my mom worked at Hewlett Packard ended up being 43 years, as all was said and told. And so kind of was in that tech space and in that tech sort of mindset. But when I was young, I don't know why, I wanted to be a pharmacist. I was going to be a pharmacist come, what may. And I worked at a pharmacy when I was 15 and a half years old, and went to pharmacy school, year-round program for a doctor of pharmacy degree. It was like I was all in on this decision, and my parents were all in on this decision. And it was funny because I just vividly remember one day standing, filling prescriptions. I'll kind of raise my hand up, counting pills, 5, 10, 15. And I just thought, I can't do this. And I knew it before I had the courage to tell my mom and dad that I couldn't do it. and it's one of those things, talking to college students too, is just because you have this path and this track doesn't mean that it's set in stone forever. And it was a pivot and a realization to me that I had to feel passionate about what I was going to do, and that my support system would be there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, of course. And I ended up going back to Silicon Valley. I was going to school away from Silicon Valley, and just trying to figure out what my next career path was. So I'll sort of pause the story there. But, kind of pivotal moment number one was thinking I knew from the time I was very, very young, and sort of setting it in stone with family and friends, that I was going to be something that I realized it just wasn't me.
Yeah, and staying, I think, authentic to yourself, but also being open to change. Even if you stay in your existing role, but finding the new in it is an important life lesson. Speaking of pivotal moments, I know we both related, and I'm not sure if it's been touched on as much in some of the earlier sessions, but obviously unique to women in marketing in particular, is a lot of us are moms. You and I both share that, and it also presents, I think, a unique perspective, not only as a woman in leadership, but also in how, we manage our teams. And I know in your career trajectory too, you also had, some unique experiences as a working mom. Can you share a little bit about that backstory, some of the lessons, and how you're applying that to your management style as well?
Yeah. So yes. So I'll kind of transition of working in that pivotal moment of pharmacy to what am I going to do? Ended up going into a marketing class and just felt like the heavens opened up and sunshine was pouring down upon me, and it was like, this is where I belong. And that was a really wonderful moment for me, and to realize that I could have this great career and it wasn't the path I thought. And so then fast forward, taking that career on in Silicon Valley, working in high tech public relations at first, and then expanding into marketing, ending up doing a big bulk of my career at Hewlett Packard, just like my mom had done, although coincidentally separate from her, not because of her. And really focusing there. So that mom piece of seeing my mom as a role model, as well as seeing friends around, and kind of especially as Silicon Valley sort of matured, and with that working from home and flexibility, and felt like such a wonderful place to be able to start a family. And my husband and I did that. And we have two boys who are now 20 and 18, by the way, both in college. Crazy how fast
My future.
Yeah, oh my God. But that change of working on site all the time, and then taking advantage of Silicon Valley where teleworking was super accepted, being able to stay at home with a nanny. We were very fortunate for that. But to be there with my kids and still be able to advance in a career was, I think, I'm very fortunate and blessed that Hewlett Packard was where I was at that time in my career, and that those opportunities were open. And it's funny now, that was pretty ahead of its time then, in like 2000 is when when I was pregnant with my oldest son. And now we're kind of back to that, which is really cool. And so that flexibility for women to be able to not have to make necessarily the ultimate choice of I have to pick one or the other, but being able to kind of meld that, I think is really, really great. And then being able to kind of have that flexibility with the kids has been a really important sort of piece of my early career.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's important too, as managers, because if we've experienced that flexibility, you want to obviously be able to pass that along. And I think in particular as women, we oftentimes lead with empathy. I don't want to generalize, but I think just, as women leaders, that kind of collaborative, empathetic, compassionate point of view is really critical, and obviously kind of testament to being a mom. The other thing too is I think it also forces you to be sort of a ruthless prioritization master. And I don't know if there's any other words of wisdom, just as far as your management style, as women are looking to sort of move up in their career journey, especially in marketing, maybe from a junior to mid-level role, or mid to senior level role, that you have for them based on your experience or what you're seeing in the marketplace.
Yeah, a manager just wants to know that they can reliably depend on their team, and that the team is focused on its objectives. So a manager needs to be very clear about what those objectives are and what the expectations are. And I always have been a manage by objective and results. Like, what are we trying to achieve in outcomes, basically, rather than I need to know where you are right now. Are you sitting at your desk? That kind of thing. And it's like, as long as the work is getting done. So I say that to say, if you're earlier in your career and, you are demonstrating that sort of eagerness to understand what the roles are, ask questions, be clear with managers about things that might come up, because manager just basically never wants to be surprised, right? That's the whole managing up situation, is so that your manager just knows what's coming. Even if the news is bad, it's totally fine, as long as you're clear about it. And that's kind of like on the responsibility, let's say at the lower level, where then managers will trust and understand and realize that you're dedicated and outcomes focused, which is great. And then if you're, that first line manager or second line manager, it's giving that love and trust to your team, being clear with them, and giving feedback proactively so that they can learn and grow and feel great about it. And you can feel great about the team, that they're making the right kind of decisions, wherever they're remote, especially in this pandemic world we're living in. And then as a leader, I think, sort of if you're responsible for a department, it's giving that opportunity to your leadership team to give them the objectives, set them up for success, remove the barriers, and be the best kind of supportive leader that you can be. And those are just the kind of things from that perspective that I think are always universal truths that we can all deal with.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, empowering your team, and speaking of empowering individuals, we hear a lot about empowering other women within the organization. I think it was mentioned on one of the earlier sessions, the industry group chief. I'm actually also a member. I feel like we're both, Amanda and I are plugging it, but it really is about building a network from a support system. Can you share a little bit about how you are supporting other women within your organization, and what you found effective in building that network, how you've maybe leaned on it as well?
Yeah, I think we need to pay back. And I know the last speaker, Alicia, was talking about this a little bit too, that she had a great mentor and then said, she asked, what can I do for you? And her mentor said, pay it forward, basically. My words, not her exact words, but it resonated with me a lot. And I think that's what we need to do. I have always made time and to be available, to be a mentor, not because I think I'm right about everything at all. It's to have that two-way dialogue and to keep me understanding and learning, as well, and to keep my finger on the pulse of what the sort of struggles and thoughts are of the teams that are, toiling away all day, every day. So I think that mentorship is important, and helping sponsor people is super important. Understanding what their goals are and championing them in the organization so that they have a voice beyond their own is really, really important. The other thing I'll say, though, also is the notion that men are great supporters of women too. And probably one of the most important sort of mentorship but manager relationship I had was with a man at HP, and he gave me the opportunity and my family to move to Geneva, Switzerland for a year. And I say that to say, because at the time I was a mom with two small boys, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I think he could have very easily just sort of in his own mind, not in a bad way, but just sort of thought, who could this opportunity go to? Alyson's got 2 young kids and her husband works, and that'd be hard to next, and kind of like file right through it. But he didn't do that. He gave me the opportunity to accept or pass on the opportunity. And I really appreciate that from him. And he really, didn't filter, asked. We talked a lot about it. What would it mean? What would I do? What about my kids? What about my husband? All those things. And I felt like he was such a big supporter of a working mom. And I only say that to say that, women support women, women should support men, men should support women, all of it, right? Like, we are people supporting each other in business and helping each other succeed, because when we do, we all, rise up the outcomes for the organization.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I also have been lucky to have some really strong mentors, all of them men as well. And I think that kind of allyship is important to celebrate too. Allyship between men and women across, the sort of full kind of DEI spectrum as well. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. I think for any of our male audience members too, to sort of make note of the fact that it really does take that kind of championing of one another so that we can continue to grow as women in marketing. Well, shifting gears a little bit, and thank you for sharing all of these personal insights. I'm sure we'll come back to them a little bit later too. But in your role at State Farm, you also are adapting as well. Obviously, it's a very established and well-known brand. Doesn't have, awareness problem by any means. But I know when we spoke before, you've been sharing a little bit about some of the new marketing channels that you've been exploring. Before you jump into that, though, can you share a little bit about your role, maybe some of the larger marketing objectives that you're tackling this year, and then we can jump into some of the new cool things that you're doing to reach that younger audience?
Perfect. Yes. So I ended up in Silicon Valley technology for 27 years from a marketing perspective. Never thought I would go to the insurance industry or a US only brand. But pinch me, I think I have among the best marketing jobs out there. It is the most fun team, a wonderful award-winning organization that does some pretty amazing marketing. And I was attracted to it because there are some things that the tech industry was doing in marketing that were a little more advanced than the financial services and insurance area that I could bring to make a contribution. Super important to me. How can I make a contribution in the role that I would take? I've thought that through with every decision that I've made in my career. And this was no exception. And so from a State Farm perspective, as you said, we don't have an awareness problem in the United States. We've been around 100 years and are the #1 insurer. So it's great, but we have a relevance concern. We have to attract the younger, every brand does, the millennials and Gen Z tsunami that's coming of buying power. And we are in a category, unlike when I was in technology where we could drone our way to interest, if you will. Now it's a category that folks are apathetic at best. It's not fun and exciting and sexy. In fact, in some areas of the insurance industry, it's darn right scary to think about. I'm kind of thinking life insurance, for example, for some folks. And so our challenge is, how do we continue to be relevant in current conversations and start imprinting with millennials and Gen Z for sure, this again tsunami of future humans, the demographic that marketers are going after, but help kind of connect to a category that's really hard to connect with. And what we're doing is really interesting things. Like State Farm's always been in live sports, and it was funny looking from outside going, that's interesting. A lot of linear TV happens in the insurance industry, and you think about it, it's among the most competitive categories: alcohol, cars, insurance, maybe pharma, but for sure the other three. And so creating that linear, umbrella awareness is really important. But we do a lot you can't turn on a sporting event pretty much and not see State Farm somewhere, which is great. And they've done a good job. But what we're now doing differently is, and this is like super exciting, the NBA 2K gaming game. We have the first ever non-playable character, and it's Jake from State Farm. So we're very to have such a great asset in him, the character, and we were able to get that character as one of the first stops for players to come into and have the ability to buy some State Farm apparel, of course, the red shirt and khakis, but like super fun, and being able to place our brand in interesting ways where we're not endemic, right? HP and Intel were endemic to gaming. State Farm is not. And so trying to think of different and creative ways to kind of expand where we play and where we're known to reach another additional expanded target.
Yeah, no, I think that's what's sometimes the most unexpected, is the thing that triggers that opportunity to engage. Are there any kind of success metrics that you're able to share as far as some best practices, how you're measuring the success of these new channels? Because I think, to your point, this is not something that's unique just to an established legacy brand. Consumer habits have shifted. And so there's all these new opportunities for brands to reach their audience in new and unexpected ways. But would love to hear a little bit about how you're measuring the success of those types of experiences, any learnings.
Yep. Yeah. So we are definitely, we look at brand awareness, unaided awareness, consideration, preference, engagement. It's typical measures. But what we're doing is sort of going out there and testing the waters a little bit, like, Jake in this game. That hasn't been done before by a brand. And so it's a little bit new. And we are also trying to figure out, well, how should we measure? What could we do with our asset in this scenario, for example? And additionally, like another really interesting one is audio. So a long time ago in my career, radio was a thing. And then I'm not saying it's not a thing, but it wasn't as big of a thing. The internet was where you went, all digital and mobile, and it was like such a focus. But lately, this podcast and this resurgence of audio, and the amazing thing about it, and I'm tying it to sports too, is audio is all about passion, passions of people. So gosh, if you're like me and you want to go down the rabbit hole of, I just watched a streaming crime video and now I can go podcast my way into what was that hotel and who was killed there. I don't know, sorry, things like that, or what ghosts were lurking in behind the corner over there,
Right.
Which is just an interest of mine, although that sounds weird now that I say it out loud. But anyway,
a lot of true crime fans out there, don't worry.
Okay, good. But sports is the other one, is why I bring it in this, right? So anyone, you can use audio in such a unique way. And from a marketing perspective, those streaming services, we do a lot with iHeart and Spotify, for example, Pandora too. But the idea is to be able to really target with passion points. And so again, the game is like that. Sports is like that for us. Passion points in audio, with podcasts, those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do differently that might be a little more unexpected for either our brand or for a big brand like us.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible that those marketing metrics are still holding true. Obviously, sometimes the basics. So that's what we rely upon to make decisions and to pivot if necessary, to kind of bring it back to how we started our conversation. Are there any best practices that you're kind of learning as you're deploying some of these for the first time?
Yeah, yes. And you made me think of it. And I'd say, especially if you're trying something new, like we are in a couple of the places, is, have the courage to then say, oh, that didn't work. And it's not a fail, especially if you're testing something different and you had the thought and you're responsibly using your budget, right? And your brand in the right kind of places, then realizing if it doesn't work is also interesting, I think, and stopping it. And not saying, oh my gosh, I have to, hide we made a mistake or it didn't work well or whatever. The point is that you can learn from it. And I like to say we need to have the intestinal fortitude to make the tough decisions. And that's what we try and what we stop. And I think that those are some learnings that are really important as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And data can sometimes inform those decisions, all the performance metrics, et cetera. But I think sometimes too, it was brought up in an earlier session, just the authenticity of the brand. I know we find that in the emerging tech space at Trigger too, maintaining that continuity with the larger brand goals. Are there any other kind of learnings or sort of biggest takeaways as you are kind of moving forward with sort of the reprioritization of relevancy in sort of the younger generation that you can share as well? I don't know if there's one kind of campaign that comes to mind in addition to those that you've shared.
Oh gosh. For us, we're getting excited about in person again too, because I think that especially with young folks and in a category that isn't exciting, let's say, although I think it's pretty cool, but maybe not as exciting as other categories, is getting that pent up demand for this in-person, this connection, I think is really important for brands. And we're excited about, again, passion areas for folks. Whether we talked about sports already and gaming, but music is another one as well. We're also leaning into different cultural areas. Obviously the Hispanic Latinx market is so critical in the United States and so important. And we have, some really great campaigns that we've done there. We are continuing to rethink and do more, do better, demonstrate our understanding of that target more and better. And those are, just the territories, if you will, that we think are really critical, especially for the younger folks. The older generations, it's interesting because there's this thought that just the younger people are using digital or mobile devices to search and to get quotes for insurance online or digitally, things like that. But we're finding that all the older generations are as well. So it's not like it's just a young thing. And so that digital approach, where a lot of brands think that perhaps that's the way into some younger people under 40, it's true, of course that is, but we're finding also that everybody is digital and everybody is using their phones. And so really thinking about not only targeting in certain sort of mediums, only young, because you could be, depending on your brand, depending on who your target customer is, like you could be missing out and not realizing that we Gen Xers and older are technologically proficient as well.
Hey, we're still cool.
I think so, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the pandemic to a certain degree has kind of accelerated some of that adoption as well. I like to joke, with the QR code, when my parents, know to pull that up now because of, everything going digital with, in-person experiences, pulling up the menus, then you're reaching a much broader audience than to just think within sort of that sort of silo. So those are really great insights on the channel side, on staying kind of true to those marketing objectives. One thing I think is really unique about State Farm in particular, although I think our audience can relate to it, who have unique distribution channels, is your agents and their role. Can you share a little bit about the importance of them, how you leverage them, also how you collaborate or sort of weigh their needs with the larger brand needs?
Yeah, our agents are our primary distribution channel. So yes, critically important, and 20,000 strong across the United States. And they're in the communities where our policyholders are, and where potential policyholders are. And so, State Farm, for decades, it's 100 years old next year, has always been there, like a good neighbor. State Farm is there, always been there in times of need. And those agents are sort of at the forefront of representing what does that mean. So in a catastrophe, for sure, weather events, things like that, obviously State Farm has a very big focus and a lot of aid and community service, but even in other times, and those agents are the face of our brand and the sort of right there on the ground with customers. And that's not unique to us as far as having an external distribution that's closer to the customer than you and the mothership are, obviously. But I've been thinking about it in ways that, a little bit differently. So from my past of being not only a B2B marketer, but a B2C and B2B together, State Farm and insurance kind of thinks of itself as a consumer marketing focus. And I think that there's a lot we can do with B2B learnings, selling to and through agents, not unlike, when you're working with a retail partner, any channel partner, that's what they are. Because, by the way, I think I should state this. State Farm agents are not State Farm employees. They are independent small business contractors. And so they make decisions on their own. Of course, they get a lot of support from corporate, and they get to have the benefit of our brand and things like that, but they make their decisions on their own, and they are their own small business. And so there's influencing that has to happen as well. And so, and I'm sure many folks on the line here today can relate to that. So thinking about marketing to and through your distribution channel is really important. And in addition to thinking about the end user customer or your end target, policy holder in my case.
Yeah, no, I think they have definitely a special place. And can you share, I'm just looking at the chat here, just about, opportunities to learn. Have there been any moments where you've had to reconcile these kind of maybe a little bit of a disconnect between their objectives and yours. And can you share any learnings from that?
Yeah, yeah, actually all the time, right? It's just like any partner. There's a healthy, wonderful tension, and we deal with it every day. But what's great about our organization is the open, collaborative approach with each other. So there's a lot of love and respect there. It's not an adversarial relationship, for instance. And so, we've made decisions from a marketing perspective to subsidize certain tactics for agents, and it's always great to add a subsidy to help sort of juice up or spur a specific tactic or a behavior that we want for a period of time. It's really hard to take it away. And so coming on board here this year, there are a couple of those tactics that were tried and true for agents holistically in their past that we've made the decision to sunset. Things like direct mail, for instance, and to kind of take that money not away from agents, but more modern marketing approaches in digital, for example. And I'll say subsidizing and juicing up those areas of the behavior and where our target is more. But the point is, that's not to say that some agents, many agents don't have success with that particular tactic. It doesn't mean it's a bad tactic. It doesn't mean anything that they're doing anything wrong either. In fact, I was speaking to an agent just last week here in our headquarters office in Bloomington, Illinois, where I moved from the Bay Area for the first time in my life after 50 years of life. So getting used to Midwest weather and all. Anyway, any support and help with that, please, winter is coming. But the agents were here, and one of the agents was from the Arizona area, and she said, I work with all retirement communities. That's it. That's the community I'm in, the zip code I'm in. And these are people who don't leave their homes, and direct mail is really important to me. And it's like, yes, and we will still make it available. It doesn't mean it's not important. So I just use that as one very tiny example of the mix of all the things you could do. You have to make some hard decisions sometimes, and your distribution channel may not always agree with it, and it's just a matter of a conversation. And the conversation I had with her is, and we're still creating the assets, making them available, letting you bulk buy so you don't have to pay for onesie twosies yourself. It's just, we're not subsidizing that the way we did before.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it sounds like it's an incredibly collaborative relationship. And again, as you mentioned, hopefully relatable to a lot of the audience members who have a unique distribution or franchise model. But I thought worth, sharing, just because it's something that, you're definitely looking to adapt, and likewise opening up some new opportunities for those agents as well. I'm going to open the audience to definitely ask questions if you do, but I have a few questions that I wanted to ask you as we start to round out. We could chat forever right now, so we're almost running out of time. But a lot of your insights have been very inspirational as a woman in marketing, the various initiatives that you take in, across the brand. And so I'm always curious, asking inspirational women, who inspires them? And I would love for you to share that.
That's a great question. So lately, actually recently has been Mental Health Awareness Day. It was maybe this week, very recently. And, I'm really inspired by the two athletes, Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles, recently, who very publicly, in the height of their, Naomi being a tennis player and Simone obviously an Olympic gymnast, having the courage to say, I need to stop for a second. I'm not going to move forward with this event, or I need to take a little bit of time for myself. And I was really impressed by these young women. It's hard to do in the public eye like that. Not only they've trained their whole careers and they're at the pinnacle of their success, and there's a lot of expectations riding on them, their sponsors, et cetera. And their own personal just competitiveness, let's say, they've made it, and to give up the opportunity to compete, I think, is probably really hard. But that tells me how severe the issue was. And it's, again, they're young, The public is on them. It's not like me sitting in an office. If I need to take a day or not, take some time off, it's who's going to know, no big deal. But I was really inspired by them. And I thought they were a really good role model for us all, men, women alike, to say that sometimes it matters how you feel. And not sometimes, it always matters how you feel. And sometimes you need to express what you need. And what we saw is, and people will rally around you.
Right.
So it's never a bad idea to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was so brave for them to do that in such a public way, but also so incredibly relatable. I mean, it was World Mental Health Awareness this past weekend day, and I think it's just important to honor kind of the self-care. I know you and I were talking a little bit about making sure we prioritize working out, and mental health, and yeah, it's just really empowering to see those women go out there and kind of exemplify that, and as a reminder for all of us from a self-care standpoint. We do have a great question from one of our audience listeners. The question is, with so much noise in the world today, how are you thinking about showing up and amplifying your milestone celebration as you head into State Farm's 100th year? Big milestone.
As if I planted a question or something. So it's great. And to be honest, though, I'll share, and some of you may relate to this, that it's one of those, how much do we amp up and to whom? Because the danger, not danger, it's too strong a word, but the question is I don't, it's not your father's Oldsmobile, to harken back to an old campaign. And, we don't want to be perceived as old or not relatable, but in the financial space, the insurance space, you do want somebody who has been there and is reliable and dependable, and your policy is backed by real currency. If something happens, you will be supported, right? So there's that balance. And what does it mean to be 100 years old to our older customers who've been with us for a long time versus what it means to be 100 years old to a younger generation that hasn't thought about insurance and doesn't even know if that matters? So yes, we are planning, big things, especially internally and for our agents, of course, for next June is our 100-year anniversary. But we're also looking at what that means externally. And I think what you'll see is, depending on, we want to target our message properly. So hopefully, the right message version of this goes to the right intended target, because our media buy is right. Marketers will understand what I mean by that. But I think it's slightly different about what it means to different ages too.
Well, happy almost birthday. I'm excited to see all of this roll out going into next year. I'm sure you've got a lot that you're going to be tackling, as I'm expecting, like many brands, you're in that planning phase for 2022. It's hard to imagine it will be here before we know it. As we're coming up a little bit on time and I don't see any other questions, I do have one other one that I want to sprinkle in that's a little bit more tactical, because we've been talking about some of the sort of big strategic initiatives, as well as some of the words of wisdom that you have as a woman in marketing. Are there any resources, things that you're using on a regular basis that just kind of make your life easier? I always love asking this because I can take this away instantly. Someone got me into Calm during the last panel that I attended. And I know this is a little bit of a curveball, but do you mind sharing what you might be using to make your life easier as a woman of leadership?
That's awesome. I do use Calm, by the way. It is really great. That's funny that you mentioned that. I'm big on getting help where I can, so that I can focus on the right priorities. And so meal kits are a biggie for our family, especially when the boys were both home, and over the pandemic was a little easier because we had opportunities, we were, home more, could cook easily. But cooking, a great meal from some really great food services is something that just helps. And, you kind of mentioned it before, but I think keeping keeping my mental state, what helps me a lot is my Peloton. And I don't know, maybe exercise in general. I have a Peloton tread, not a bike. And I feel like I could not live. I know that sounds very dramatic. I don't mean it literally, but it's very helpful from a mental state perspective. It's not about appearance for me. It's about stress release.
Mhm. We're all going to find each other on Peloton later.
Okay, yeah, good.
One of those incredible success stories from the pandemic where their audience completely took off. I got one like I think everyone else. And so, yeah, just another opportunity to connect as women. But thank you so much, Alyson. And for our listeners, this was a really engaging and wonderful session.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you both so much, Alyson. It was great to have you for your first fireside chat on our virtual stage. Hopefully, many more to come. Thank you, Kristin, for being such a great moderator. Awesome way to end our program today.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much to Alyson and Kristin for closing us out and all of our speakers throughout today's program. And of course, you, our brand marketer community, for tuning in and supporting us in our programming today. We have plenty more to go, but that's it for today. So we hope you join us for our next program on October 14th, a live cast hosted by Influential, themed around TikTok. So registration's available right now on our Brand Innovators website, and we hope to see you there again. Until then, I'm Emily Agate. Thank you again for joining us.